Now a hotspot for violence created by Black Lives Matter and their communist cadre, Kenosha, Wisconsin erupted into flames and gunfire in an attempt to bring justice to what looks to be another police shooting victim that fought with police, ignored commands, and had at least one active warrant. Now, people have died due to the outpouring of violent protests that have burned down, looted, and otherwise robbed innocent people of their property and way of life. We'll look at the overall agenda of these riots and what you can do about it in this episode of Activate America, Getting Active to Throw Off Government Tyranny. Kenosha is about 2.5 hours south of our location here in Appleton, Wisconsin. Protests have erupted in some of the larger cities in the state, including Madison and Appleton. According to news reports, Madison protesters destroyed property and looted stores on State Street near the Capitol building. Appleton has been more peaceful, but police were called upon to help escort people from inside the county's Republican Party headquarters after the building was surrounded by protesters that were intimidating them. One person inside there said some of the people in the building were concealed carry holders and were concerned that if the protesters forced their way in, the situation would have gotten much worse if the gun owners feared for their lives. In fact, Wisconsin has a castle doctrine law that allows citizens to use deadly force during self-defense when that person reasonably believes that such force is necessary to prevent imminent death or great bodily harm while in their home, car, or place of business. Following the police shooting of Mr. Jacob Blake, reports continue to surface of Mr. Blake's criminal background, as well as the events leading up to the shooting, including how he fought with officers, was tased, and apparently tried to retrieve a knife from his vehicle. In the meantime, those in the Black Lives Matter movement have taken it upon themselves to seek vigilante justice by destroying private and public property in the mainly working class uptown neighborhood in Kenosha. The Kenosha County Board has requested National Guard troops after Wisconsin Governor Evers nearly endorsed vigilante justice by condemning police actions before all the facts were in. Evers has been slow to act, but did send 250 troops to help support law enforcement. 500 were called upon on Wednesday after the board requested 1,500 with police powers. Many residents have decided to not let these out-of-town and out-of-state protesters destroy their neighborhood. So they have banded together, arming themselves, and protecting not just individual businesses, but entire subdivisions. Armed individuals could be seen on the rooftops of businesses and in the parking lots surrounding the buildings. FoxNews.com published an interview with TownHall.com reporter Julio Rosas, who witnessed the violence firsthand, saying both sides were armed, but those protecting property were more heavily armed. He said the rioters who were armed were mostly carrying concealed, while the other side had rifles and handguns. On the third night of protests, an out-of-state 17-year-old allegedly shot 3 rioters, killing 2 of them. The details surrounding the shootings are murky, as video captured several instances of gunfire. However, video footage reveals that the 17-year-old was being chased by a crowd of protesters before being assaulted by them after he tripped and fell in the street. It looks like he shot at those assaulting him while still on the ground, and possibly shooting at others once he stood back up. Although he walked toward the police shortly thereafter, he was not detained and went back home to Illinois, where he was arrested many hours later on homicide charges. Apparently, the rioters did not get the message, as some made mention online that other protesters planned on visiting his Illinois home to threaten his family. How smart is that? Mr. Rosas told Fox News he didn't think there was any premeditation. He said, "You have to keep in mind that the whole reason why they came out in the first place is because for the first 2 days, the rioters have had their way with downtown Kenosha. And I saw firsthand some of these armed civilians stopping the destruction in the city. Fox News wrote, Roses said he witnessed a group of rioters destroying cars in a parking lot and watched as one civilian defused the situation by verbally advising them to stop without firing a shot. He continued, We've seen this throughout any mass unrest or riots where people have had to kind of take security into their own hands. Because he said, the National Guard and the police have been mainly focused on protecting the county courthouse. As we have pointed out time and time again in these videos, these situations all follow the same formula since the 1960s. A perceived and usually false police brutality or so-called unjustified shooting is all the trigger needed for hard left radicals to swing into action to demand justice, breaking many laws in the process, of course. These radicals are part of an organized effort that has been funded in part by millions of dollars through various foundations, including George Soros' Open Society Foundations and now many Hollywood celebrities and some professional sports athletes, all in an effort to weaken and break down the relationship of trust and accountability that local communities have with their police. One way the radicals weaken this relationship is to vote in officials who do not support police, but push the false narrative that the police are at war with those they serve, including the unfounded claim of systemic racism. Given the rewriting of history that is being taught in our public school system, the downgrade of overall morality, and the constant push that we have a democracy, it's no wonder that many of those seen protesting are not black, but young, white, radical activists that would have been considered by dictators such as Vladimir Lenin as useful idiots being used as dupes to further the communist agenda. We need to recognize that the issue of what they are protesting is not the real issue. The real issue has always been and will always be revolution. The breaking down of society, morality, the American way of life in order to usher in communism, total government. By exposing this agenda, we put the radicals on the defense. Part of their offensive is to push the defunding of the police in order to weaken the role of the police, take more officers off the street, and then, of course, to demoralize those officers. Funds will be diverted into leftist social programs that will do nothing but add more bureaucracy, cause more crime, and frustrate the community as a whole. Remember that the point is to cause more problems, ushering in the excuse for more funding and more government involvement, especially from the federal level, to help bring about a national police force that is beholden to a central government instead of the local community. These radicals are highly organized, and the only way to defeat organization is with counter-organization that exposes their agenda and actively works to counter their agenda locally. The John Birch Society has implemented this agenda through the Support Your Local Police and Keep Them Independent campaign since the mid-1960s. Why? Because this agenda is not a new one, as demonstrated by the riots of the 1960s. The whole point of the SYLP project is to organize people into a highly effective opposition force. Because of the longevity of this organization, we have assembled a best practices manual that will help you organize the support you need to succeed. This startup manual takes you from the very basics of starting a local committee to enlisting sponsors, choosing leadership, and creating local support. The idea isn't so much that the committee contains a large amount of people. It's that the committee stay focused on working toward local goals like exposing the radical left agenda, defeating their radical proposals, and keeping local police working for the community and staying independent of federal agencies. You'll also need to specifically learn the process of creating local legislation, especially so you know where in the process you need to place influence in order to defeat the other side. Download this manual for free at our Support Your Local Police page at jbs.org. Only by organizing will you be able to stop this anti-American agenda and to stop government tyranny from gaining a foothold using the radical BLM agenda. Links are in the video description. And until next time, this is Bill Hahn for the John Birch Society saying stay active, everyone.